Morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining from. Thanks for giving us some of your time. Hopefully, we'll have some information here that you'll find interesting and valuable for your businesses. So, um, we wanted to take the time today to talk about some of the disruption, some of the challenges that buyers have been facing, and then some of the tools and ways of overcoming that. So with that in mind, our agenda for today is that we'll first of all start talking about just a little bit of the history. There's been a dramatic shift in priorities based on a lot of world events over the last 2 to 3 years. Move from there into some of the ways that you can tackle these issues, and in particular, using technology as part of your business solution. We'll give you a little bit of background about who we are and what we do. And we've also got a couple of case studies, some customers of ours that have learned to not just survive, but to thrive during these past couple of years by using some of these tools that are available. And as Kate said, happy to take your questions. We'll try to make sure that we have some time for them. Quick introduction for myself. My name is Darren Reddies. I am the Director of Pre-Sales and Solution Design at the Answer Company. I've been with the company since 1999. And during my career with the Answer Company, I've spent a great deal of time working with distribution and manufacturing companies. So supply chain has always been a big part of what I focused on, and very much something that we've looked for continual improvements in terms of solutions. So I wanted to start this session by just thinking a little bit of the shift that we've seen in purchasing priorities, and some of the things that we've focused on as we've been working with businesses to try to help them out. Because prior to 2019, we were very much focused on really, first of all, as buying professionals, on really trying to find low-cost providers and then locking those in. That often meant looking overseas. Shipping costs were relatively low. And then the other item was really managing inventory levels. And we were continually working with customers to find out, how fine could we cut that inventory down, trying to bring that down to just in time. We had dependable supply chains that allowed us to get quite lean and to really reduce inventory carrying costs. Things changed a lot, obviously, as we moved on. And some of those efforts, frankly, have led to a certain amount of exposure. So that now, if you were going really lean, you probably were at quite a bit of a disadvantage to those that had somewhat bloated inventory levels. So certainly a little bit of a buffer. And while looking for low-cost suppliers certainly, made a lot of sense, we're seeing that importance for diversification. So to look at some numbers, if we compare then and now, looking at that period before, shipping costs that we were seeing before, somewhere in the $3,500 to $4,000 per container, now increased by fivefold, so up to $16,000. One of the, depending on the industry, is that you're working, and we saw a huge increase in duty rates in certain areas. Certainly, if you're dealing with things like metals and things that are coming in from China, some of the policies, the trade policies that were coming through over the last few years, we had customers go from 3 to 4% for goods that they're bringing in, and skyrocket up to 25%. So huge impact. And then obviously more recently, some of the fuel costs that we've seen come up. And there's a lot more beyond this too. And we'll go through some additional numbers as we talk about some of the specific events that have led to the challenges that we're facing right now. One of the big ones has been the delays that we've seen and the lack of predictable lead times now. So it's happening on multiple fronts. First of all, when we first saw this, it was just trying to get goods primarily out of China in 2019. And we saw with their initial lockdowns, as things were all of a sudden dramatically delayed, And in particular, this had a real impact for anybody working with microprocessors. And we still see that right now. The auto industry in particular really suffering for that. But as this rippled through, then we were seeing the container shortages that were going through, and there were panics on getting containers over, and we saw containers being shipped empty to get back just so that containers were available. And then as these gluts worked through, ports were clogged, and as a result, we were seeing lead times again doubling for a lot of this. We'll talk, anyone who's got anything, any kind of product that's agricultural related to, obviously some of the more recent problems are really having a dramatic impact and will likely continue to for some time going forward. So I realize that most of you haven't been living under a rock, and I'm covering things that are probably well recognized, but we'll talk specifically about how some of the events from the past couple of years have specifically affected supply chain. So as I was mentioning to begin with, we started really with the pandemic, shutdowns, lockdowns that were going on. And these are clearly not history yet. They're still continuing on. There's been ports out of China that are just reopening. Anybody who's waiting for goods from Shanghai knows that things just started moving again in the last couple of weeks. So we're continuing to see this. It's still extremely unpredictable in terms of how the pandemic is going to continue to go through. While things have loosened up in North America, clearly on a global side of things, we may still see some significant delays specifically related to the pandemic. As I mentioned, the shipping chain challenges that we've faced really started with that container shortage. And so the rising costs of getting goods brought over, that 5x increase in shipping costs, it certainly was a big deal, but just actually being able to get a container on a ship has become a huge challenge and become a big part of what we're doing. I mean, there's been smaller things along the way too, things like, a container ship getting caught in the Suez. If you take a look at the value of goods that was on that ship and the delay, these things just tend to snowball, and they've been growing and growing. And we've been seeing at a local level here in Vancouver, where goods are being stuck at the local ports for multiple weeks. And again, it's an unpredictable nature to this too, where one container will be released and numerous other containers will be sitting there. So again, knowing exactly when goods are arriving has been really hard to plan with, for sure. More recently, the conflict in the Ukraine has and will continue to have some really big effects for us. So the first first impact that we really noticed was, of course, fuel costs. So important to recognize Russia's contribution to the worldwide fuel market. In 2021, their fuel exports were $211.5 billion. Depending on which stats you're looking at, they're listed as either the third or the fourth largest worldwide exporter of petroleum, and exporting about 10 to 12% of the global crude oil production in 2021. So as soon as we started to see this conflict, and then with the sanctions that came on, there was an immediate effect with the price of diesel now having doubled in the last year. And so not only now are long distance transport prices, not only have those ones doubled, but anything domestic as well too. So the cost of transportation, period, now for any goods coming in, obviously a huge impact. Anybody who's working with wheat or grains will certainly have seen the price increases in that commodity. And obviously this affects a huge number of food processors that we're taking a look at. So again, to take a look at a few numbers there, Last June, a bushel was going for about $313. That hit a high in May of $1,200. It's currently at about $1,049. So again, huge increase there, and obviously this goes into a huge amount of food processors. We're seeing things, obviously like a potential food crisis in areas like Africa, where the majority of wheat is coming from either Russia or the Ukraine, and this is absolutely going to have an effect on worldwide prices as well. It is having an effect on worldwide prices. And while we might think of this being something that is positive, at least for Canadian farmers, unfortunately, all agriculture is going to be going through the same challenges as well, too. And so again, we think about the ripple effect for this, and that's primarily because of the worldwide fertilizer market. So again, this is an area where Russia has increased its footprint over the recent years. They are a top global provider of fertilizer. Belarus and Russia account for about 40% of the world's potash production and exports. So we've seen already how this has been pushed into a 30% surge in international food prices. A little bit lower at home, more like a 10%, but we can expect this to continue to rise. So anything agricultural related, we're going to continue to see these pressures coming through as well. So really what we're talking about here are two things that are coming out of all of these world issues that are going on. One being delays. Things are arriving much slower and with much less predictability than they were previously. So huge challenge for planning there. And of course, the other side being that they're coming in at a much higher cost right now too. So as I say, a tough time to be a professional buyer. So what we're looking at then is, how do you play defense in this kind of environment? And we talk about staying agile when there's this kind of chaos going on. It really comes down to risk mitigation and the ability to be proactive. So by risk mitigation, obviously, we're looking now for options in supplier diversification. There's certain tools that we're going to need to be able to do that. And I realize suppliers like volume, this can be challenging, but what we're seeing clearly the risk of not making efforts to go in and try to make some efforts in supplier diversification. And really what we need to do, and I talk about being proactive here, is to realize the impact of a problem as that problem is occurring, to start being able to use some modeling and to take a look at this, seeing this in 2 to 3 months when this actually hits your bottom line, hits your P&L. Obviously, at this point, you're in crisis mode. And at that point, you're going to be stuck for a good long time. Your business is clearly going to be at risk. So there was a fairly recent Gartner report that looked at this. I was talking to supply chain executives, and the report came out to say that 68% of supply chain executives are saying that they're continually responding to the high impact disruptions. I'm surprised it's only 68%. Quite honestly, I would think that this would be nearly everyone. But importantly, 61% have responded saying that technology is a source of competitive advantage. And really, this is just echoing what we have seen as well, is this need to be proactive means that we've got to leverage digital tools that are out there. And these tools do exist to be able to help to give you this foresight and to mitigate some of the risk. So moving from hindsight to foresight, as I said, this is moving from where we're seeing this after this, the financial effects have already been realized, to seeing this as the problems are coming. And really then I would break this down into 2 key areas. Part of this is gaining the visibility. We talked about the delays and the unpredictable nature of when goods are arriving. So we need to be able to make plans accordingly, and we need to be able to communicate what's going on clearly throughout the organization, and often to our customers as well too. Our experience has been is that the customers are generally pretty forgiving, but the last thing they want is surprises. And I'll talk about this in a couple of our case studies as well too. We recognize that there can be direct penalties, if not the risk of actually losing customers as well. But clear communication obviously can help with that. Beyond understanding the logistics and looking at timing and being able to plan around that, the other is really to understand costs. And it's not just understanding costs after they've happened, it's to take a look at these things so that as soon as we see an announcement that duties are being increased, as soon as we receive an announcement that our freight costs are increasing again for a container from India or from China, that we can take a look at that and do an evaluation and understand what our future landed costs for products are going to be as they're coming in. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is talking about that landed cost management. And so this is, first of all, understanding the current costs, and really understanding that true cost of bringing in a product. It first of all requires that you've got the tools in place, that you are fully burdening that cost, that you're not just looking at the cost from the supplier, and that you have a tool then that not only lets you capture all of those current costs so that you've got clear visibility, but that, as I say, as a new cost is being announced, that you have a way of budgeting that, modeling that, and being able to take a look at exactly what your future costs and therefore margins or change in prices is going to lead to. This can lead to a couple of different things that we talked about in terms of strategies to deal with some of the problems that we've got. So one of these is to potentially look at sourcing from local suppliers. So historically, again, looking back a couple of years ago, the reason that we were moving our purchases overseas was due to lower costs. And if we've got full visibility to exactly what our costs are, then we can do a true analysis and a true comparison to take a look and see what are the savings. And again, going and contrasting that with what are the supply chain risks of continuing to work with overseas partners versus potentially sourcing some of this locally as well too. Those overseas suppliers may not be as attractive as they were previously, but you need to have the tools available to be able to do that proper comparison. The other thing, and again, this comes directly from our customers and some of the things they're doing, is a potential change in product mix. And I'm going to talk during our case studies about one of our customers who has really seen this. So depending on the goods that you're bringing in, your margins with these rising costs are clearly going to be eroded. And for some goods, this may no longer make sense. Obviously, there's a much bigger impact if you're importing things like floor mats versus if you're importing things like iPads when you see a container cost going up by 5 times. So the other side of this then, the other main tool that we're looking for is to assist with import logistics. So again, depending on the complexity of your supply chain, you'll either be seeing this in a larger or a lesser extent. But if you've got multiple containers on multiple ships, bringing in multiple goods from multiple suppliers that are spread across multiple POs, it starts to get really complicated to keep track of what's where, what's arriving when. And as I say, when this was predictable lead times and we knew that we could count on goods arriving in a certain number of weeks after placing a purchase order, it was one thing, but that is no longer the case. We've got the delays from the suppliers. We've got the delays on getting this loaded into a container, getting this actually shipped out. And then even once it's landed, here in Canada, we're seeing those delays on getting that out of port. And as I say, one of the things that we're looking for is clear visibility that we can share throughout the organization. So in the manufacturing environment, we're seeing this need to be able to share this information on a near real-time basis to production planning, so that we can be going and determining what we're actually able to make based on the materials that we have available. And for both manufacturers and distributors, obviously this pushes through in terms of customer service, being able to give our customers a clear idea of when we're actually going to have product available. And if we've got enough visibility on this, we may be able to actually go and source something perhaps at a higher cost, but to go and to meet our deadlines on time as well, or at least to reduce the delays that we've got. What it comes down to, though, as I say, is being able to know specifically every product that I've sourced, when is it going to arrive? And with every delay that occurs, being able to quickly be able to update those expected times, so that at any time I can go and take a look and share that information. So at this point, I'm going to segue into talking a little bit about our organization, what it is, what we do, how we do it. We've been in business since 1994. We are now the largest Sage and Acumatica partner in Canada. Those are the two key products that at this point we work with. We have 120 team members spread across 6 offices in North America. The majority of those team members are consultants that are working directly with customers every day. And we have about 2,000 of those customers. Some of these customers have been with us since we opened. So we pride ourselves in having very long-term relationships with both our customers and to have long tenured employees as well too. As I mentioned, I started with the company in 1999, and we have numerous people that have been with the organization for 15 plus years. We're very proud of our volunteer hours. This is a big part of who we are. I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of some of our work in the community. But we're also really happy about our success in our ability to help our customers as well too. So we've experienced 115% annual growth in the last year. We're continuing to see our ability to help our customers is something that they're appreciating and is allowing us to continue to expand our offering as well. So as I say, we are recognized by Sage and Acumatica as their top partner in Canada. Sage has us as their Platinum Elite winner, and we are an Acumatica Gold partner as well too. So we're also recognized by a number of third parties that are out there. Bob Scott's top VARs, once again, we've been named within his top 100 VARs. And Business in Vancouver has recognized us as well too, in terms of our growth. And once again, we've been named to their fastest growing companies. For those of you who aren't familiar with Sage and Acumatica, quick little background, as these are the two ERPs, two companies, the two publishers of ERP software that we work with for the most part. Sage is a UK based company. They have numerous products out there, some of which you may have known from the past. ACPAC, which is now known as Sage 300, Sage Intacct, Sage X3, Sage 500, Sage 50, Sage 100. So they have numerous tools that are out there. And we do support all the Sage products. Acumatica is a more recent addition to the landscape. We've been dealing with them for a number of years, though now we see great opportunity for mid-sized companies. Again, they have a great offering for both distribution and for manufacturing companies, and have some really strong tools, and not only for the supply chain issues that we're talking about now, but really for that full management of businesses within those spaces. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I do have a couple of case studies that I'd like to go through and talk about before we make some time for your questions. First one that I'd like to talk about is Danica. So this is a company, we have them listed as a manufacturer and distributor, but really the manufacturing is being done overseas for them. They're bringing in kitchenware and home furnishings. This is a company that is a longtime customer of ours. We previously implemented a system for them, was at the time known as Mass 500, now known as Sage 500. We recently migrated them to Sage X3, but they've been a customer of ours for about 16 years now. And they do bring in their goods primarily from India, also some from China. And so there's been some significant challenges that they've faced. So they first of all, when I talked about goods with slim margins, this is absolutely where Danica is at. So they are the company that is bringing in floor mats. And they saw their lead times double as they were going to bring things in. So whereas when they were bringing in things from India, it was a 30-day lead time before. It's now a 60-day lead time. It's meaning that they're having to order 9 months ahead of time instead of 4 months. And they have quite seasonal goods too. So one of the knock-on pieces of this that again leads into supply chain was an improved forecasting model. But specifically when we talk about some of the ways that we play defense and some of the things that Danica has worked on, and as I say, this was within the Sage X3 environment that we did this, was they were needing to plan ahead to cover their requirements. And one of the big things was to be able to share those ETAs. So absolutely, this is a company that has a purchase order that may be hundreds of lines long. And then that's being loaded into different containers. One container may have lines from multiple purchase orders, and these things are coming in, and they need to be able to let their customers know. The contracts that they enter into with their customers often will dictate some pretty stiff penalties if they're late. So they're looking at what they can do ahead of time. They need visibility as soon as there are going to be these delays. And then at times, at least if they've got this and they can communicate this out, they can mitigate some of the risks as well too. So previously, they had one individual that was trying to manage and take a look at these capable to promise, these ETAs as they were coming through. And she was doing it in Excel, trying to do this manually, and she would do this once a week. It was always behind, and it was a huge amount of work. This is pretty much a full-time job for her just to try to update this Excel sheet. Clearly quite imperfect in that information was never really up to date. And Excel just wasn't a great way to be able to see at any time which sales orders were now delayed, what the impact of those was going to be. So with their digital transformation as part of their latest implementation, we've moved into a system now that allows them to go in and to indicate when a ship is delayed and exactly by how long, when a container is delayed, and at various stages, whether that container is delayed being loaded, or if there's a delay once it's reached port. If there are things like demurrage costs, they can see those immediately and see the effect of those. And in near real time, then this is being communicated throughout, so that at any time, a member of the organization can go in, take a look, and now see when a product is going to be arriving. And of course, they've got shipments coming in throughout the months, throughout the season, and they can see for all of those, perhaps now when those expected later is coming in earlier, they can see for every week by week or even down to day by day if they want, exactly when those various products are going to come out. So huge improvement for customer service, and really has allowed them to go and take steps to reduce some of their risks. As I say, it has led to some hard decisions, though, too, in terms of some of their product mix as well, too. They've recognized some of their products just aren't feasible now to be bringing in. When you've got very bulky goods that are low dollar value, and you see this rising cost in shipping, it's something where, because they have clear visibility on their margins and they know exactly what this product is costing to land in Vancouver, they can make those decisions. The other company that I'd like to take a little bit of time to talk about is Tamor. So you may be familiar with their products, seeing them in places like Home Depot or Bed Bath & Beyond. Really, the two main areas of products. One is door hardware, and the other is bathroom hardware that are coming in. Similar to Danica, they're having their products manufactured overseas, so they're not actually doing the manufacturing themselves. They'll do some kitting, but having these products manufactured for them overseas, importing this, and then distributing. They have operations both in Canada and the United States. And so they actually faced some additional challenges that we haven't talked about yet. And some of these are again, going to increase for specific industries. So the commodity markets, I talked about in terms of agricultural with wheat and with fertilizer for the general agricultural. But in Tamor's case, this was the rising cost of metals. And again, if we take a look at some of the chief exports of Russia in particular, where the sanctions are now in place, but also the Ukraine, we know that numerous commodity prices there are again going to continue to have pressure on them. So we're going to see this. So they saw these commodity prices pushing up their prices of their finished goods, and then the duty increases as well too. So this was specifically where they had products that were coming in, and they saw this increase. Most of their goods were around the 3 to 5%, and all of a sudden this rose to 25. So obviously instant impact to margins, and then of course the longer lead times that everybody's been facing. And while they had gone and taken some proactive measures as they started to see some of these things unfolding, and went and increased their inventories, that was part of their strategy. But a large part of this, talking to them, was really about that ability to project future margins again too. So as you're seeing this cost in an input, being able to determine what is the increase in our product cost going to be, as you're seeing an increase in a shipping cost or a duty cost, even before this has taken effect, even before you have purchased goods, what does that mean? We know that our pricing models aren't something that we can just instantly release higher prices out to our customers, but certainly if you've got contracts coming up, you've got that additional information that you need to be able to use as you're going and negotiating your contracts with your customers. And again, looking at that product mix. So this once again just illustrates the need to have this information as soon as possible. We can't be waiting for this after it's happened. We need to be able to take the information of what's happening to our supply chain, put that into our modeling tools, and be able to see what the final effect of this is going to be, and then to go and to make decisions, whether that to be to change our supplier, or whether that be to change our product mix, or to change our pricing, or a combination of all three. And so once again, this has been similar for Tamor. They've done quite well through this. And as I said, part of this was going and increasing some inventory levels ahead of time. But a lot of it too is going in and being able to evaluate suppliers. So they'd be the first ones to tell you that with what they're doing, it's very hard to make this shift rapidly anyway. They are locked into long-term contracts with suppliers. But if they've got this visibility and they can take a look, at least as contracts are coming up, they know exactly what they should be looking for and exactly what a competitive price point is, being able to take a look at the full burdened landed cost of a product that's coming in. And again, they were one of the ones that were very clear that their customers have actually been very good and have been really quite flexible, but it does come down to being proactive in your information that you're offering to them. If your customers are calling you and wondering why their goods are late, there's obviously a lot less forgiveness than if you can be proactive and tell them as soon as a delay is expected and easily communicate that out to them with a real time frame and give them some specific idea of when products are going to be arriving. So with that with all of these points in mind, we did want to make sure that we allowed plenty of time for your questions. I can't promise to answer them all, but I'd be happy to talk in more details about any of the things that we've talked about, or to talk potentially about some of the other challenges that you may be facing as buying professionals.
Great. Thank you so much, Darren. All right, we do have a couple of questions that have come in, so let's just get started with those.
Okay.
All right, so the first question is, what are some telltale signs of when to consider a digital transformation project? And at what point should I consider adopting an ERP?
Yeah, great questions. And when we're talking about these challenges in the supply chain, these are really some of the ones that I would say I become some of the telltale points. But if we pull back a little bit and think about this at a slightly higher level, and to address the question really in terms of when should you be embarking on this digital transformation, we always say it's when the pain of staying the same outweighs the pain of change. So clearly there's a cost associated with digital transformation, and ERP implementation is often part of that. And there's a lot to be gained from this, but I'm all in favor of absolutely keeping manual systems. I brought up in Danica's case where they were moving from Excel to a more of a digital tool to be able to do this. That's not to say that everything needs to move out of Excel. What it comes down to is, are you able to go in and with the tools you have, determine what's the impact? So again, if we now think specifically about some of the problems that we've been talking about, with the tools that you have in your toolbox right now, if a duty increase is all of a sudden announced, if an increase in domestic freight prices is increased, if a shipping cost all of a sudden increases, do you know what the impact is to each of your products? Can you say today what this is going to do to your margins and what the impact is going to be? If you have a product that's delayed, how soon can you communicate that out to your customers? I usually go and try to quantify a bit of risk that's associated with these things. And I very much am a fan of trying to do at least a rudimentary ROI analysis on this, and to take a look and see what is the payback that's available by going and moving to more of an automated system, perhaps a stronger ERP, and then to evaluate on that basis. So once you've quantified your return, then you can look at what is a suitable investment in terms of your digital transformation.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, so we'll get to the next question. So what is the evaluation criteria when selecting an ERP? And do you have recommendations on how to get started with that?
Sure. So as I say, it really does come down to where are you seeing obstacles as you go to improve. So we work a lot with growing companies because I think this is the most common time that this comes up. And it may be more environmental that leads to this need, but it really comes down to, first of all, recognizing a problem or an obstacle, or maybe to be a little bit more positive, an opportunity for growth if something is taken care of. So as I say, I feel that it's really important to go and start by going and trying to determine what's possible if we change. And so if you've got somebody in the organization that's capable of that kind of a business analysis, that's great. If not, this is the sort of thing that we've spent our careers working on, is to sit down with an organization. We're not talking about products. We're specifically just looking at what are the challenges that you're facing. Let's take a look at that and then think about what the solutions look like to those problems. So as you go to embark on this journey, as you go to start on it, it's a matter of recognizing what you really need to be looking at to move your organization forward. As we say, we propel companies forward. And then it's having somebody with that expertise to start looking at and saying, is there a better way to do this? Often this is referred to as best practices. So ideally, you want somebody who's able to go in and define the problem in terms of a business issue, and then to translate that into functional requirements. So it's somewhat similar to the exercise that we've gone through this morning. The business problem is supply chain disruption, delays, unpredictability, rising costs. Those are the business issues. So clearly define those. And then for your organization to understand exactly in terms of dollars and cents, the quantity, the quantification of that. So are we at risk of losing customers? How much of our margins decreased? Understanding this and putting some numbers to it. And then in terms of the functional requirements, again, if we think about today's topics, going in and defining, yes, okay, I need something that helps me with import logistics. I need something that helps me understand landed costs and allows me to do modeling of landed costs. So this is the journey that we see companies successfully navigate this with. And often this does require outside assistance to actually go in and ask some of these questions. What I will say is the other side of this, what it isn't, is going through a checklist and going through and saying, oh, okay, well, here's a set of features now, decide which ones you want. The problem with going with a checklist approach is that you're not quantifying things. So we see companies going in and taking things from more of a wish list, and this is where you end up, with the $5,000 solution to the $500 problem. And it really is going and understanding exactly how big is the problem, and therefore how big should the solution be to solve it.
Great. Great. Thank you so much. All right. So I haven't seen any more questions come in, but we'll give everyone a couple more seconds just to make sure, just while they're having their final kind of thoughts, if there's any questions to come in. Any final thoughts before we end today, Darren?
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thank you to Supply Chain Canada for giving us this opportunity. We recognize the challenges within the supply chain that businesses are facing. This is by no means the only area that we explore with businesses, but we do recognize that within the last 2 to 3 years, this has been a significant disruptor. So we absolutely would love to work with any of you here today to help you explore solutions, challenges, opportunities that you may be looking at. We do offer a product agnostic approach where, as I say, we focus on your business issues, and then we can help you to define functional requirements before we ever move toward looking at products and solutions. So we pride ourselves in being able to understand businesses in a wide variety of industries, and we do have consultants with a very large depth of experience across a large number of verticals.
Great, thank you so much. That presentation was absolutely very helpful, and I'm sure many of the attendees are going back to kind of rethink on where they can explore and what they should be doing moving forward. So thank you guys so much again, as well as to the Answer Company for their partnership today. I also want to thank the attendees for participating.